Yesterday, CAS's judges deal Ruto body blow. President William Ruto is between a rock and a hard place on what he'll use to reward his cronies after the courts found the chief administrative secretary position unconstitutional. The move will save taxpayers some 187 million shillings in salaries over the 4 years that they would have served. It's only 187 million.
I mean, the grand scheme of things.
Surely.
It's not really. Yeah, a bit of a splash, but not a deluge. It's just
not much. Eh?
All
right. So, this matter was taken to court by the Law Society of Kenya and others. The why aren't you deputy president? Okay. The vice president of the Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo, is in the studio. Are you deputy or are you vice?
I'm vice president.
These are men and women of letters. So are we to take the view that anything that is vice related within the association, you are...
Wow. Okay.
Deputy, you can play with the term as much as you like, but you're deputizing.
Yes.
Vice?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Vice president.
Yani mtaalamu wa mambo maovu. Yeye ndiye amesimamia mambo maovu.
Yeye ndio rais wa waovu. Okay. Vice President of the Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo. Ndegwa, Njiru, constitutional lawyer. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Black Bull, good to have you here again.
Good to see you.
All right. Let CT give us the day's proverb.
We are in the country of Libya. They sell the monkey and laugh at the buyer.
They sell the monkey,
yes,
and laugh at the buyer.
Yes.
Wakili Ndegwa, what do you make of this?
Basically, in my view, the buyer who makes or purchases this monkey, you're looking at the value of that monkey and what this guy has taken home and what the seller has taken home. That the seller has taken home something much more valuable than what the buyer has taken home. And you can actually juxtapose that to the current situation. In Kenyan situation, it's very applicable that the monkey has no value. So you're looking at the value for your money. Yeah. If I would become political and try to look the money as the currency for the votes and the people as the voters, you'd ask yourself, is there value for the votes in this country? And my answer would be that the people who cast their currency on the 9th went home with a monkey. There was no value.
Who was selling? Who was the seller?
The voters. The voters
or the buyers?
Were the sellers. Were the buyers.
Who was the monkey?
The monkey is loud and clear. That's where the monkey are.
Who's the seller?
The seller is us, the buyers. The seller is the politicians. And most importantly, the people in the executive. Because the people in the executive are the persons who are supposed to sort most of our messes. So we have no value for it. And that's why that proverb is very reasonable and very applicable in today's situation.
It makes sense to you.
It makes a lot of sense to me because, and I'm saying this with a lot of clarity in my mind, that had we had a system that is responsive to the plight of the people, you'd not be having people in the streets with sufurias.
There would be no bias.
Had we taken a moment to inspect the monkey,
yes,
would not have gone home with that monkey.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but you see, the monkey was the sound that the monkey produces is called what?
The screech.
The screech was so enticing and so appetizing that you could not even think that you are now buying a monkey.
Which monkeys are you listening to?
Yeah.
I think this man he understands that world well.
Let's hear from the Vice President. What's your interpretation of this proverb?
I would say that they sell the monkey. The monkey is a depiction of mischief. Looks harmless, but it has a lot of mischief and it brings problems along the way. And you laugh at the buyer. The buyer, I would say, would be the citizens. And here I allude the monkey or the sellers to be our parliamentarians. I have a strong anger towards our members of parliament. Even if you start from the finance bill, where were they when people were voting? Some were absent. Why not just take courage and take a position? Remember, the public have voted you in to be their voice. Others are busy hiding in toilets, busy receiving tenders, busy receiving handouts. Yet the public was relying on you to stand at the gap. We're expecting our members of parliament to be able to check the executive, not to be songstresses. And let's say, and sometimes even, let's say, not to be monkeys of the executive. So it's unfortunate, but the public are now the buyers. You're facing the finance bill. You're facing huge wage bills. If you just see the reaction yesterday after the decision of the court, and for a while, I might be said that I'm not too kind to the judiciary, but I feel like for a while our judiciary has been behaving like the Antoinettes, telling us to eat cake. Instead of looking at the reality, I feel like they sit in glass houses, and I hope the finance bill will also give them a taste of what the common Kenyan faces, and so they can also get a taste of the laugh.
How will they get that taste?
From
Fuel is fueled by us.
Let them also get a bit of more taxation, because they are not cushioned. SRC is not planning to cushion them. It's only cushioning the executive and members of parliament. So let them also get a piece.
So their 35% will go.
Teacher, can I ask a question?
They get a piece of the pie of what we are feeling. I wanted to also finish with something.
Please.
Yesterday, Nation was talking about a story of Mama Dorcas, the one who feeds her children paracetamol to her children and grandchildren. And I say, what the heck? These are the people what we are being told are the hustlers. That you have to feed your children paracetamol to sleep so that you cannot feed them. You're giving them hot water to drink. Where are we as a country? And then a senator goes and posts the way this is for public interest, yet people are starving. The Mamambogas who has taken a debt of 2,000 and cannot pay. And even if you say the other party is inhumane, but probably they're facing the same plight. They're also struggling to put food on the table. And so it's high time we wake up and we look at this monkey and
don't say smell the coffee, otherwise you'll
we smell the coffee and also hold our parliamentarians to account.
City.
Yes. What I wanted to ask, the eloquence with which you've raised this issue makes me think that these high-ups that we are speaking of, the ones who are in bed with the executive, what if they summoned you and told you, here's a bench, sit on it, and let's call you judge.
And wear a wig.
Yes, and wear a wig, and make pronouncements like the ones these ones made and others. Would you still hold the same view?
Make pronouncements in terms of upholding the rule of law?
If you're made a judge,
yes.
Would you still have the same views? And I'm asking you the same question to my brother. If you're both made judges, would you still have the same views?
It depends on how they're made judges.
No, when you're made a judge, you're a judge. How you're made now, that is detailed.
You apply, the JSC advertises, you apply, you go through the interview process, then if you're implying if they are...
Yes, I'm actually not implying. I'm actually not implying. I'm stating
appointment like this.
People get approached if they would be interested, even as that application process takes place.
And then you're promised that it's
no. The promise isn't there, but you are seen to be appropriate. Said, look, would you be interested? So that when the advertisement comes, you follow the process. But people are spoken to. Our learned friends can confirm or confirm.
Yes, actually, that happens a lot, and we end up getting the rots even in the bench. But because most of us have not appreciated the ability to move with the new constitutional dispensation. We keep on priding ourselves that we have a very progressive constitution, but we ourselves are not progressive because we have not assisted the constitution to attain or to achieve its objects and its purpose. So most of us are where we are even with the 1963 constitution. Because if we were to be progressive as the document is, some of these vices that we are now experiencing would not be experiencing them. She has just raised a very fundamental issue about parliament. I keep on saying that we don't have a parliament in this country. All what we have is a conglomeration of some individuals who borders between minions and something of that sort and all that, because they have no mind of their own. Parliament has refused to appreciate that it's not an extension of the executive, and that they have the role of representing the people and oversighting this government. When you listen to some of them, the so-called the leaders of the majority, you go back to George Orwell's book, the Animals Farm. When you look at the pig and then you look at Mr. Jones, you wonder, is this the Mr. Jones that the pigs were fighting at the beginning of the rebellion? Now they are behaving like the same Mr. Jones. They are holding a glass of wine, dancing. They are on their toes. They are sleeping on the bed sheets. They are deleting the rules and the laws every day. There is no difference. Because if you listen to them last year about the same 16% of taxes to the fuel, and then you listen to them, they are betrayed by the muteness. They are mute of malice to the extent that they are not speaking. They are not able to see any evil today. They are not speaking any evil, and they are not thinking evil. So you wonder what happened to the revolution in the Animals Farm? What happened to that spirit of revolution?
If we bring all of this round to the events that then occurred yesterday,
yes,
in terms of the ruling, excuse me, that the court gave, then deeming the appointment of these CAS as unconstitutional, maybe we can go through some of those steps and see what got us to this point, and was it something that, even with the speaking of the words, that the removal of them or the process at which we ended up yesterday was a fait accompli from the very beginning, because some of these processes were not followed?
I would want to start with the first question they dealt with on constitutionality and process of establishing of the office of the chief administrative secretaries. I love the analogy that the judges used. They went back till the Mrima decision, and I would answer also your question when you say if you're sitting on that bench. Mrima still remains dear to many hearts for the work that he did when he was sitting in the Constitutional Court. And his decision is one that sparked the journey that we are today. And him raising that the office of the CSS was unconstitutional and how it was formed and the processes and the procedures. And so this government, in an attempt to try and adhere to those processes, tried and followed what Mrima had set down. So irrespective of there being a stay, the court was very clear that there's a stay, but no one has upset the decision that Justice Mrima made. He set out very clear parameters on what processes should be followed to make to create such offices. And the Public Service Commission attempted to follow some of those processes. And the Law Society, of course, went to court at the inception to stop the swearing in of the CSs. The court said it was premature at that time, and obviously you know what happened, the swearing in at what time. I think that's where the infamous Mapema Ndio Best commenced. We swear in people at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m.
We are early rising people.
Yeah, the early bird, wow. But thereafter, the executive slaps the court's face by deciding we're not going to appoint 23 after following the procedures that were laid down by Justice Mrima. Appoint 50. So they sort of tied the court's hand. I believe it was a fait accompli from the inception, because the courts, I would say, had given them leeway to comply, and they went ahead and they took a mile. They took a mile.
3 miles.
3 miles, you could say. But the fact is, they failed to follow the procedures. There was no proper public participation. This is a creation of offices that will affect, in terms of budgetary constraints. What was the involvement of SRC supposedly being an independent body that was supposed to help establish? And I think SRC is a total different discussion that we will have in terms of them leaving to their mandate as an independent office. Because I think they are one.
How should SRC have been involved in this particular?
The former SRC, I would say the former SRC chair, I think the previous parliament, remember her, not with so much kind words, but she was a tough cookie. she would not bow down or cow down to salary increments. And I think she was the one even who proposed decrease of some of the allowances and salaries of members of parliament. But the one we have, I would say, is one of your monkeys. The salaries are being increased right, left, and center. Allowances are being increased. And this is coming from a situation where we have carriers being targeted to raise 3 trillion from the same Kenyans.
On this particular one, the judges said that faulted the Public Service Commission for not involving the SRC.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What does that mean?
But they didn't involve SRC in terms of them actually exercising the independent mandate to review what that would mean and then place proposals on what salaries. They went ahead and, pushed whatever they want. There was an amendment also done in
the pay scale that the Public Service Commission came up with, they came up with without consulting.
Yes, without
the Salaries
consulting.
and Remuneration Commission.
And also they should have also, SRC being a public body, had to have also undertaken public participation. If you're proposing to make changes and introduce new office with new salary bands, that is something that ought to be placed before members of public. You have to appreciate what are those costs. And I remember the Law Society, even before we filed our first suit, we did a letter of information, seeking information from the Public Service Commission, telling them, you're creating this office. What will it mean to the Kenyans? How much financial impact will it be? Give us a breakdown of this information, which was not forthcoming. Okay. And so the courts have put to task the executive, what processes and procedures did you follow? So that we maintain that level of independence of these constitutional bodies that were set for a purpose. Yeah.
Additionally, just to add on what you said about the SRC and the whole issue, when the gazettement was done, the gazettement carried with it the job group of these individuals. So the job group had already been determined. And when you make a determination on the job group of these cars, you've already placed them in a certain salary scale. Instead of involving the SRC in debating as to where do these guys fall, because the court made an observation that the cars sits between the CS and the PS. Then they come up with a ridiculous job scale. They say that the cars is above the CS. Then the court says
above the PS.
The PS.
Yes.
Then the court says that when you look at the way this office was created, one, there is no debate about our money. And remember, there are some serious principles about how we allocate serious public resources under Article 201 of the Constitution. It creates the perimeters and the principles of how to utilize the national resources. So it's not for an individual in the name of either Public Service Commission or in the name of Chief of Staff or anything, or Secretary to the Cabinet, to come and create a job group within our ranks without involving with the people, yet we are the taxpayers. Number two, the court made an observation that whereas we vet the CS and we vet the PS, the cars who sits in between ridiculously are not required to undergo the process of the vetting. So basically, you are being served by hooligans who sit as members, who sit as cars, proposed cars for the lands issue, Ministry of Lands. But when you have a small problem of land issue somewhere in Nakuru, the best he can do is to draw his gun and shoot. Yet, he's a person who is supposed to sit down and operationalize the land policies, the land laws, and see whether our policies sit well within our laws. But how is that goon doing? The goon is drawing a gun and shooting. Yet, that is the person you're supposed to go and serve Kenyans.
Are you saying you're shooting because he had not been vetted by Parliament?
No.
Parliament could have detected you are trigger happy.
You see,
you are unsuitable to hold this office. So let's take a break. But this Katiba, did we know that this Katiba was this complicated when we were voting for it?
The Katiba is not complex.
I voted yes, but this thing now, take us back to 2010.
The Katiba is very good.
The Katiba,
mtu hawezi fanya kazi Kenya.
The Katiba is not.
Let's take a break. Faith Odhiambo is the Vice President of the Law Society Society of Kenya. Of course, we know the LSK took the case of the chief administrative secretaries to court. Ndegwa Njiru is a constitutional lawyer and, of course, a member of the Law Society. We are discussing that. So what next? When we saw the reaction from the bar, many of the lawyers who are standing, especially those who are respondents, were saying, this matter has been dealt with in 3 separate courts.
Yeah.
And now there's confusion that's been created with the majority decision of this court. There is the Justice Mrima issue. There's the Employment and Labor Relations Court issue. There's now this issue. What are those issues?
There was no confusion.
What are the 3 different issues?
Because if you look at the judgment, and especially the judgment from the majority, is that they analyzed the 3 scenarios. What Justice Mrima said, what Justice is it Mbaru said, and what this court has said. Justice Mbaru was only dealing with one aspect of the whole process of the recruitment, whether the advertisement was properly placed. He was not dealing with how the office was being constituted. He was not dealing with the constitutionality of the office. He was dealing with whether the advertisement was regular or irregular. Justice Mrima dealt with the entire process. Does this process sit well within the Constitution? And the 3 bench yesterday adopted Justice Mrima's preposition, and they affirmed that yes, he was correct in his interpretation. However, they also went further to the Court of Appeal and said that the only thing that has happened in the Court of Appeal is that the decision of Justice Mrima has been stayed. The orders has been stayed, but the judgment has not been set aside.
What does that mean?
Yes, stayed, set aside.
Yes.
What?
Orders, judgment.
What happened is,
Yes.
when Justice Mrima declared the whole process unconstitutional,
Okay.
the consequences of that declaration would have been that the individuals holding office were to vacate.
Yes.
So they rushed to the High Court, to the Court of Appeal, and they stayed the implementation of that action of
Staying
them.
means what? The question.
Walisimamisha,
Waliweka break.
waliweka
paused.
break, walikanyangia break.
They paused.
They paused it so that
So
these
that
guys,
judgment could not be actioned.
it could
So
not
they
be
didn't have
actioned,
to
it could not be
vacate office.
So
executed.
they didn't have to leave office.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the only aspect they dealt with. But they said the Court of Appeal is yet to adjudicate and determine whether Justice Mrima's interpretation was correct or not. So they adopted and said, because these 2 courts, Justice Mrima's court and yesterday's court, are courts of concurrent jurisdiction. Concurrent means that they are enjoying the same power.
Yeah.
So they cannot overrule them. They cannot overrule them on an appeal, but they can get away from what he said. They are not bound by the decision of Justice Mrima. So what they said is, since this judgment of Justice Mrima has not been set aside by the Court of Appeal, and it's a legal and sound judgment,
Set aside,
we agree with you.
Set aside means what?
Imetolewa, imetupiliwa mbali, imesemekana hii haiko,
Reversed.
it has been reversed.
Yani, okay. So,
Imetolewa. So they said it's a judgment that sits well within the law. So as it was held by Justice Mrima that the office is unconstitutional, so it is to date.
Remains.
okay. Haijanda Supreme Court.
Bado.
No, it's not even been heard and determined. I would like to add, based on what you said, when the court was looking at also the decision of Justice Mrima and they agreed with it, for Justice Mbaru, they say, fine, that was the process followed. However, when you look at, when they analyze even the process and the procedure from how the president created the additional 27 posts, they look at, yes, the president writes to the Public Service Commission, saying that he'd want to add 27 more posts. Now remember, when Justice Mbaru handled the matter, there were 23 posts.
Yes.
Now, the president writes to the Public Service Commission. They respond agreeing that he can do so.
After public participation.
No public participation. In the absence of public participation. And they say also there's availability of funds. I say, wow, there's availability of funds to create new offices.
PSC said there's availability.
There's availability after discussing with the National Treasury and establishing that there are funds available for the extra 27 posts.
Right.
And they ask the president to nominate who he proposes for the 27 posts, and he does so. So from the position where Justice Mbaru handled the matter till where it gets to the court today is that there were 27 new posts that were created that did not go through any public participation. So the public were not aware of how these posts were created, what was involved. We the people did not have a say.
Yes.
Then for Justice Mrima, if you look at what the Court of Appeal considered, they said based on the public interest, they will grant stay pending hearing and determination. So the parameters for stay was based on public interest, because these are positions that had already been taken. They had been sitting for quite a...
And there are people who are already occupying those
Yes,
offices.
and it would have meant disruption of public service. And also another question would have come back, would have been asking, who gave you the authority to start paying these salaries? Refund our money. Refund our monies. So they granted it based on public interest. So they had not delved into the merits of the decision of Justice Mrima.
Okay.
And so the court decided that the decision of Justice Mrima still holds. It has not been set aside. It has not been removed. I would quote Chief Justice Willie Mutunga Emeritus when he said, court orders must be obeyed, even if you believe they are made of witchcraft. Until they are set aside or varied, you must obey those
the
court orders.
So that appeal that was taken to the Court of Appeal last year, was it last year or 2021? So the appeal has not been heard.
No, it's
the
not
matter
been
is
heard.
still pending.
It's still pending.
And now it is going to now be joined by this new appeal.
It seems.
Yeah, of course, yes. There may be a possibility.
There's something I wish to understand here.
Yeah.
You've gone to Court of Appeal.
Yes.
What did Court of Appeal say?
The Court of Appeal stayed the execution of Justice Mrima's judgment.
All right. Stayed.
Yes.
Yes.
Which means they said, don't action it.
Yes.
Until we determine this particular appeal.
That bit I get. So, of what use then was that judgment? Because I assume that until that higher court came to a decision that was either supporting that decision or was contrary to it,
Yes.
the previous judgment was supposed to hold sway.
Exactly. In a good constitutional sitting where the rule of law operates, even this current administration should have realized that there's a judgment by Justice Mrima, and then they should have halted the whole process and await the Court of Appeal to make a finding on it. But because we are living in a state of impunity, and we are being led by people who are impunious,
Right.
they could not have the respect and the fidelity for the law. And basically because it looks like the executive is overwhelming the other offices created within the executive. Because why would somebody whom the constitution dictates that we are all equal before the law, whether you are sworn in as president, you are sworn in as the chief justice, you are sworn in as city, Muga, we are all equal before the law. And I believe in that principle myself. So why would somebody wake up one day with a dream that I need to add 27 more cars? You send that letter, and then it's lads on the Public Service Commission, and the much they can do, yes, create Mr. Sir. We even have,
We have money.
excess money to spend. And who gave this PSC the audacity and the thinking that they can allocate our money?
So the problem here is the Public Service Commission.
The problem is the entire system.
No, don't dump
Even that
everybody.
person
No.
triggering the PSC,
Listen.
the person triggering the PSC with the letter of 27 is as bad and as stinking as PSC.
But he has done what he is required to do by law.
Which law?
So he came up initially and said, you know what, I'm seeing a need here.
Yes.
I have cabinet secretaries. There are 23 cabinet secretaries. And I want to get them assistance.
Yes.
So they can help. Because these people, the kind of job I've given them
Yes.
and what I
Heavy.
expect from them, it's heavy. I need them. So he writes to the PSC.
Yes.
Having understood what Justice Mrima had said, process was, writes to the PSC and says, you know what, I have this kind of need.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Can you find maybe whether Kenyans would agree
Yes.
that we create this position so
Yes.
that it helps my administration to
Yes.
deliver
Yes.
the bottom-up economic transformation
Exactly.
agenda? And the PSC, then it's their job.
Yeah.
They are a commission created by law.
Yes.
It's their job to follow the next step of the process.
Yeah.
They come back and they say, we follow the next step of the process. People have said it's okay. you can create the 23. That person then says, hey, still, just giving Moses Kuria one CAS
It's not
is
enough.
still a lot, because when he's in Mauritania and it is a person
and Mauritius
here.
and looking for Azungu.
How about PSC? We actually increase these so that they follow with the state departments instead of ministry. Sends it to the PSC. The PSC drops the ball. So let's look at the PSC then dropping the ball and not going back through the process. Public participation, asking the Kenyans, all right, the president wants to create 77 more and this is the justification for it. What do you think? Can we allow him? They come back to him and say yes or no. If the PSC has not done it, and you've come back and said, you know what, we have consulted, we've even consulted the treasury, we've even consulted, and we found that it's actually possible.
I would say I would agree with you to that extent, because even the court faulted the Public Service Commission for failing to even respond to certain allegations that were raised by the petitioners. And so silence means, you
be taken to mean yes.
The meat of malice.
Yes. So, yes, the Public Service Commission did drop the ball in several occasions, and they also similarly overstep their mandate even by creating job groups instead of letting SRC carry out the independent mandate. So there are glaring faults that even the court has faulted the Public Service Commission, that you can clearly point and see PSC failed in 1 to 3 instances. So to that extent, I agree with your analysis and argument.
I think I would go slightly differ and go with what CT would say from where they come from, that the fish will rot from the head. To the extent that had the person who proposed not made that proposal, then the mess would not have been done. And the problem we have in this country, and the quicker the people realize is this, Latif, the better, is that we are being led by a person who did not interrogate, read, appreciate the Constitution. I believe Mr. William Ruto has never read this Constitution.
You believe?
I believe so.
It's by faith.
Not just actually by faith, even by deeds of his actions. Do you know why I say so? One, in 2010, when you are all for the Constitution, he was against the Constitution. So,
as was his right.
I believe, as was his right.
Yes.
I believe he must have been sworn in with a Constitution that he has never read. And that's why we are having all these messes. And this guy has transgressed the Constitution, left, right, and center. Our Constitution is being raped every day, every night, every morning by this administration.
And the previous one?
What would you have... in this case, I still have to come back to this matter. Because he went to a commission that is tasked with the responsibility and mandate to hire.
Yes.
And he went to them and he said, look, all right, these 23 essentially have been passed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So while we're at it, I would like some 27 more. I have given it to you, who has the mandate to do just that.
Exactly.
If you find any discrepancy herein, then it is your responsibility to then tell us this cannot happen.
Let me tell you why the fish is rotten.
Can we fault him?
Even before faith goes.
Can we fault him for that action?
Yes, we should. You know why? There is somebody called the Attorney General, whom we keep on saying is a chief legal advisor to government.
Not say he is.
He should be. He should be.
The Attorney General, not the person.
No.
The Attorney General.
Is.
Yes.
The office should be. No, actually is.
Yes, it's
but the person is not. So what I'm simply saying is this.
Right.
The Attorney General knows that there is a judgment by the High Court of Kenya that has not been set aside. He knows it has binding effect. The Attorney General knows that Article 10 dictates that this country will be a country that will be ruled by the rule of law. The rule of law stems either from the parliament or from the courts. Because when a court pronounces itself, it becomes the court-made law or the judiciary-made law. So when he goes then and advises the president, and the president, having sworn to protect the Constitution, takes over the advice hook, line, and sinker without even having to appreciate that there's some other institutions in this country who have independently dealt with that issue. Whom do you blame?
Again.
You go back to the lake and say the fish is rotten.
No. If the Attorney General, which is a constitutional office with a clear mandate and role, if the office of the AG fails to give the said advice
Yes.
to the holder of the office of the president, blame the AG.
It's the AG.
If the Public Service Commission fails to conduct its job, it's the Public Service Commission.
The other day,
But-
we were discussing this matter of forests and what have you.
Yes.
And the pronouncement the president made. And we debated it here. And we said, you know something? Let's not rush to blame the president. It may sound political, but this person has advisors.
Yeah.
We even have a minister who's in charge of environment and forestry and all these green things.
Yes.
So, surely the president must have spoken to some people who understand ecology, blah, blah, blah,
I
blah,
know
blah,
Faith
blah.
wants to speak.
Let me go first and
Yes.
then we
Yes.
can come
Yes.
back to you. I would say it's this way. The Public Service Commission, even if you look at the affidavit that they argued through the Attorney General, they strived to try and follow the decision of Justice Mrima in terms of the process they followed. And I would say that this government has been singing they would adhere to court orders. So I hope
No, adhere to the law.
they also
And
say
court order.
obey court orders.
Yes.
The president has been very clear from
Court order.
inception
Yes,
that
you know, I'm
let's
sub-
obey court orders. From the time he swore in the judges that had not been
Tuendele.
sworn in.
I agree. Tuendele.
So they strived to try and follow Justice Murima's decision. However, I would agree with him to this extent. There's one senior counsel who normally says there's the things on the ground and there's the academics. Academically, or in best case scenarios, we should be having a situation whereby the office of the Attorney General is independent,
The
that he
Public
does,
Service Commission.
that he can, and I think for the first time, it's only Amos Wako who shocked the nation when he went and gave a different opinion to what the president of the day then, the late President Kibaki, saying that he advised the president not to appoint the chief justice he appointed, that it was against the law. It had never happened. But that is ideally in best interest. And ideally also the office of the Public Service Commission should be independent. And they should be able to tell the president, no, let's go through this process. But you remember mapema and your best. So we also know what is academic and what is real on the ground.
You know,
and you have to accept how a government is run starts from the top.
You know, I don't understand this thing. Huh? The president comes in, the administration is there, the executive are there, and we know from history the executive will always want to do things the way they want, which means trying to subvert the law. We know this. So why are we discussing this thing from the premise that they are doing wrong? And we know that's what they're going to try to do. Why don't we focus on the individuals who ensured that this ill or we're speaking was perpetrated? Because
That's a good
they could
question.
have said no and
That's a
gotten
good
sacked
question.
for their efforts.
You know, I'm not very good in English, but I've heard they say, show me your friends, perhaps I'll even tell you your character. So the moment you see that the president is always making wrong blunders,
Are they wrong, really?
and is messing up the country left, right, and center, it then means that his advisors have a problem. But who appointed these advisors? It is him, having properly evaluated and collected all his possible faculties, decided that so and so should be an advisor for this and this, so and so should be the Attorney General, so and so should be
Yes.
this and this.
Yes.
And then you realize that whatever output is coming out from that process is a fault process. Then you realize that then it is garbage in, garbage out because of garbage.
Did he take an oath of office for them?
Yes, he did.
No.
He did. He
No.
took an oath of office
For
that is-
himself.
No. He took an oath of office to govern.
Yes.
And he requires people to govern.
Yes.
If you look at the Leadership and Integrity Act, then you go to the Public Service Act, then you go to Chapter 6 of the Constitution, we are looking at about the question of meritocracy, we are looking about the question of integrity, we are looking about the question of the wellness of an individual. So all those components are key in governance. But who decides who should become my advisor? Isn't he the one who decides?
Yes.
Yes.
So the moment that he's pinpointing and picking a person who is incompetent, it tells you that he did not have the ability to evaluate who is competent.
No.
Yes.
He evaluated and found this person to be competent based on their track record. You see, this person has not been a presidential advisor before. You're not picking from 7 people who are working as attorney generals Unpicking one.
Let me
You're
tell you.
looking
Let me
at
tell you one thing, Eric.
This person is a former president
Eric.
of this. No, this person is a member of the judiciary. Is a president of the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
Has worked in the judiciary for long. Understands the law in and out. Has interpreted the constitution. Let me make him my personal advisor.
Yes.
Murima says, advise. No.
You know,
This other person has been a magistrate, has worked in the judiciary,
Yes.
has been a member of parliament, a law
Speaker.
created law, has been
a
speaker twice,
Yes.
legal advisor.
Yes.
Now, Dania is saying wrong.
Yes.
Kina Faith
You
have gone and
can't
told
really
him
fault
kwenda huko.
the appointing
Yes.
authority.
The appointing authority is wrong because if you realize the strategic positioning of all those individuals working in this administration,
Yes.
they are purely placed conveniently and strategically to facilitate the process of spillage of our resources in this country.
That's your
Any
interpretation.
person who has been placed there has been placed for a particular purpose, to be a conveyor belt,
That's your
Spillage.
interpretation.
to be a conveyor belt for spillage.
That's your interpretation.
No, it is the truth.
According to whom?
According to my evaluation.
Oh,
And according to what the Kenyans are saying,
Interpretation.
you look at it this way. Look at it this way. Finally,
Our
you,
time
you,
is
you
up.
mentioned something about the forest thing, and then you realize that when somebody is out saying that I'm adopting 200 acres in Kakamega to conserve forest,
I knew you were going to
another one is legalizing the cutting of the same
I knew
trees,
you were going to
and they sleep on the same bed.
I knew. And
they share a bed.
Ndegwa Njiru
And
is a
they share a
constitutional
bed.
lawyer.
Yeah.
Faith Odhiambo is the vice president of the Law Society of Kenya. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. You guys should come back. It has been good.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.